change is the only constant. And today is actually such an example. I was really happy because today I was going to go live early, which has one advantage, which is the people in Europe are actually able to watch it as well. The only thing was the moment that I said so, actually the people, I was like, okay, I'm going to try and make it happen. They couldn't make it at all. And apart from that, it was the one thing you won't believe that actually stopped me. It was the rain. It was pouring down so heavily that I was like, I'm not going to take those 3 steps to the car because I'll be soaking wet. And I also wanted to do some other stuff in the driveway, and well, which I eventually didn't do. So my plan was I'm going to go live early tonight. And well, it's the opposite. It's about 6 hours later than I had planned. But that's okay. When I woke up just now, because that's what happened, I did come here. Then I was like, what am I going to do? And I wanted to go back and forth with Cheeky Joe about some things. But instead, I just fell asleep. So, okay, so much for brainstorming. It just didn't happen. So when I woke up, I was like, hey, am I going live still? And I was like, yeah, I'm going live because that's the one thing that I always said. No matter what happens, I'm going to go live. So here I am, all rested, I'm inclined to say. And I look back on the last week because I said Friday Night Live is about looking back on the week. Now, I've got a mind that goes in every direction. So one of the things that I had been thinking about was, well, and here we go, when it comes to change, I am going to do a training. And why did I think about the training? Well, first of all, this is also part of the training. But one thing was I had recorded a training or so I thought about how to deal with doubts and how to go from negative to positive. And oh my God, it was a good training. I was totally in a flow. And then I found out it wasn't there. And so one of my first questions and solutions was, hey, how do we deal with change when things go totally unexpected? And I was like, well, we turn it into something positive. So my first reaction was, when can I do the training? I was like, okay, I can do it when no one watches. Just at a moment that it's not too busy, whatever. And when it works, let's put it that way. And I was like, okay, I'm going to do it the Friday Night Live. And then I was, no, Friday Night Live is about looking back. It's a component of all those things. And so, well, I'm talking about this week. And, well, losing the recording is part of it. But, the way I see it, and this is about turning things into something positive. So that's one of the big things that I want to get across. Turn change into something positive. So even if we are like, I didn't want this to happen, we still can we can still turn change into something positive. It just depends on our mindset. So to get into what I said about negative to positive, a lot of people, when change happens, they cannot recover from it really well. And that's the thing. They always have this saying about the glass. We can look at it. It's half full or it's half empty. If I would look at it from a logical point of view, I would probably say it's half empty because it's a little bit less than half in it, but it's still good enough what's in there. So there we go. But looking at it as in what can I do with it? What can I do with change? How can I embrace it? Oh my God, that might be one of the most important lessons, if it's the only lesson in all of this today. And I know that that's not simple. One of the things I did earlier this week, and I talked about it extensively today, is I created a report, an overview for one of my clients, one of the local ones. And well, just like me, she's dealing with hypermobility. The big difference is that I'm twice her age. And well, she asked me last week, how did you deal with this? How did you work? And those words, they stuck. They stuck literally in my mind. Well, first, ignorance is bliss, I suppose. Besides, I come from a family, my parents were alive during World War II. So it was about rebuilding everything. And when it comes to change and it comes to my parents, the only thing they basically did, well, that's not true, but you know, a good portion of their life, it was about rebuilding. They moved from one country to another. So my dad went from the Netherlands to Indonesia. Why did he do it? Because, and then we talk about a major change, he lost his dad during World War II. So he had a disease which affected the brain. There was medication for it before there was a World War II. And then, well, the Germans took just about anything, including the medication. And my granddad died, so I've never known my granddad, which meant that my dad, at 17 years old, became the head of the family, with being in charge of his siblings. And that, oh, when we talk about change, that has changed him forever. I know so many people who have been changed because of World War II. And one of the things that was always apparent was the silence, you know. There was a lot of retrospection going on. It was their way, I guess, to deal with the traumatic events. But anyway, my granddad had this dream, and the dream was to go to Indonesia. So what did my father do? When World War II was over, he went to Indonesia to help out over there. And, well, he sort of got mixed up or part of an exchange program. So he would stay there, and my mother's brother went to the Netherlands. And, well, my father's sister got married to my mother's brother. Do you still follow it? They did divorce at some point. And, well, I'm not going to say it's weird, but it did have its impact on on our family. My mom and dad had some problems getting kids. So there's like a 20-year difference between me and my cousins. And that's, you know, they are always in a different stage of life. Now, anyway, my dad went to Indonesia, saw my mom, decided, I'm going to marry you. At some point, he married her. Then Indonesia was back then, a part of it at least, part of the royal kingdom. So my mom was a Dutch citizen. And at some point, she had to make the choice. What are you going to do? Are you going to stay a Dutch citizen? Well, that's nice, but then you need to leave Indonesia. So both of them did by the time they were married. And they went to New Guinea. And that's where they built everything up from scratch. So a lot of things that I have learned when it comes to culture and about things being the norm or not the norm is actually about what they have experienced during the time going to New Guinea. Now, there are two persons, well, three actually, still around, which are my cousins. You can tell me a little bit more about them, but two of them live far away, one is close. And I might ask them, well, they're still around, they're in their 70s. So, well, nowadays you never know what's going to happen. I was going to say they'll be around for a while, but this time is, I believe we are over the peak of getting older with all the stress and everything that's going on. I see so many people with heart attacks, cancer, all those things. So, but talking about Scratch, there was no thing as water. So they had to catch it, the rainwater, in big drums so they could actually wash. And well, they had to build a house from scratch, all those kind of things. Now, the fun thing is that I also have clients who originate from Asia. And they know what I'm talking about, and I know what they are talking about. And what has been driving them is change for the better. And whereas some of us, including me, have grown up in, I would say, even though we didn't have much money, we were in a relatively good situation. We just were not aware. For Dutch standards, and I didn't realize this until I grew up. Well, I knew, of course, because there were things that I couldn't do. You know, going on trips to school was a no-go. We would have project week and people would go abroad and I would stay in class and do fun things, by the way. So that was good. And when people would talk about their holidays and where they had been, my parents would say, you know, one day you're going to travel yourself. And well, that's true. I love to travel, and just travel is sometimes a little bit complicated. But apart from that, but change can drive our dreams. And yes, it drives me too, because I also want change in my life. It can always get better. But in order to get better, we do need to do something for it. And sometimes we are confronted with things that we didn't expect. So last week I talked a lot about things that I was like, I'm thrown back in the past. So one of the things that I do not expect when it comes to change is that I would actually go backwards. And that's the one thing that I actually also don't want to do. So I talked a lot about it with my coach. I said, how do I deal with this? Because I don't want to go backwards. Now, what you can do is you can still focus on the future. And that was actually a new way of looking at things. So here we have change. Change wants to throw me back into the past. And it was, but which elements can I use in actually move forward? Now, some of the things that I had in mind actually didn't work out. One of the things was training, which had to do with being able to teach other people, fellow therapists. And well, you have to live up to certain standards. And the training was about those standards. And it was like, oh, I'm going to learn how I can do it. So, you know, I can give training because I love to teach. There were not enough people. So that one didn't happen. Still, I got back in touch with some people from back in the days. People here were part of sort of my past life. So what's my past life? At some point, I became an energetic therapist. So I went to fairs, I had my own stand, and there was a whole discussion between me and someone else, which started like about 12 years ago. And that had a major impact on my life. First of all, I did believe in God, and then I deconverted, so I don't do it anymore. I have my reasons for it, because there are some very questionable things. And apart from that, I always grew up with, you have to look at the bigger picture. What's the moral behind the story? So getting into that discussion pretty quickly made me see things from a different perspective. Now, I don't want to get into this because I know a lot of people do believe in God, and they really need to trust that there is something, someone who guides them. So I understand where they come from. Back in those days, I didn't just become an energetic therapist. We actually called it a paranormal therapist. Now that has been changed. The education, the program is now being called energetic therapist. And we had to talk about, do you mind calling yourself one? Back then I said, no, sure. Nowadays, that's an entirely different story. And that was also part because of that discussion that I actually had. So I was being called out. I was being asked to prove certain things. I was being asked to think about certain things. And of course, when put on the spot, things never happen. That's one. But secondly, I did understand what was said. So it made sense. And as a result, I was like, I don't know what's out there. And do I know certain things ahead of time? Well, I still believe I do. The only question is why. And now, going fast forward, I'd say that a lot has to do with perception. So I didn't understand back then how that worked. Now I know, and that's actually a very recent development, that because I'm a neurodivergent, I'm more open for very subtle things. And as a result, I can tell when people are, for instance, lying or pretending or faking, or when certain things are not going the way they should. I'm more perceptive, let's put it that way. Now, I did do medium training, and it's amazing how much you can tell if you just feel. And one of the things that was said, and I do believe in the truth of that one, was, yeah, but a lot applies to this, to all the people. Just think about it. And so I started looking at things, and it was like, yeah, okay, I see it. We can take one thing and it can be explained to a lot of people in the same way. And that's the cool thing about training. When you talk about certain things, each person, well, I'm not going to say every person, but there are a lot of people out there who think I'm talking to them specifically. And that's the cool thing. The one who needs this is going to watch this and then at some point think, oh my God, she is so spot on. And someone else might think the same thing, and they still have different circumstances and different views and dreams. So getting back to change and not wanting to go back into the past, it's about how does this help you achieve your dreams. And well, I wasn't sure. How is going back to becoming that licensed therapist. Well, I'm a licensed therapist, but as in I did all the training and everything, but now I'm going to be part of a professional organization again. How's it going to help me out? I am not sure, but what I do know is I actually know the people that I'm going to be associated with, as in it's their organization. Now, first of all, I love the name CAT. I mean, really, CAT. Like meow, CAT. I think that's well, that's me. I always had a thing for mountain lions, the big cats. But cats, yeah, I've got one at home, right? So cats. And then when I talked to one of those people and I heard his name, I was like, but I know you. So I sent him a message and then he said, oh, yeah. So, and it was kind of fun. And it was nice to reconnect. So I have been to their dad's funeral. And guess what? What was he? He was someone who would be on fairs. He was well known because he knew certain things. So, yeah, paranormal is not unknown to me, even if only because my mom saw things happen which couldn't explain, other than there must be something in play. So, now, moving forward, one of the things I do believe that I can get out of this is I love anything to do with mindset. And I talked to the former school, the education where I went to, because we had to talk about the certification and all that stuff, and to figure out whether the points, accreditation points, accreditation. Yeah, sometimes, I see things and I don't think about it. I know what the meaning of the word is, but then I'm actually going to pronounce it and I'm like, that sounds weird. And accreditation is such a word, it resembles the Dutch a lot, but it's like, well, where's the emphasis on it? Anyway, I got to talk to her for a while and she was interested in what I actually was doing. So, okay. Then there was another component. I am literally cleaning up my past. Some things don't, they're not helpful anymore. They're actually in the way. And what I've come to learn in the last couple of years is that memories are in the heart. Some memories are, sort of blank, but the more important memories are in the heart. And I don't need stuff from people to remember who they were. And I don't need stuff from the old version of me to remember who I was with my dreams, because I do know very well what my dreams are, especially nowadays. And they have only become bolder and bigger and better. So, so going back to that question, how about going back to the past? Well, when it comes to dreams, it's good to, and especially going back to your childhood days, to figure out what were your dreams. Because at some point, we totally forgot. And, when we talk about red race of life and being pulled into, we have got a house, so we've got a job, so we've got a family, so we need to earn more money. Getting older, there are a lot of responsibilities that come with becoming older and also wanting things. And that means that we give in to certain things. Now getting back to that first question that someone asked me, how did you deal with it? How did you get to work? And a lot of times the answer was I basically ignored it. I just did it. Like I said, my dad was from World War II, so was my mom, but my dad wasn't really, he did everything with his hands. He could build anything. He was, and besides that, he was funny. It was in rare moments that you could see him smile, especially interacting with people. Then he would really smile. And yeah, I do look a lot like him when it comes to the way he acted in those cases. But yes, it's you do whatever it takes, and you take what you have and you make it into something that's workable. So when I said we grew up not having a lot of money, that actually was one of the reasons that I decided to start working at an early age. I needed my freedom. I needed to be able to do whatever I wanted to do. And that's what I did. And especially when you're still in your 20s, there's a lot of flexibility. We haven't experienced all those things in life just yet. And, on one hand, that's a setback, but on the other hand, actually, because you don't know what you might run into, you are so courageous. Lots of young people are very courageous. They're very bold. They just do things. Part of their brain isn't developed yet, so that makes it a little bit easier because they don't take things into consideration. Empathy is not there yet. Well, not as much as it could be. So I do believe that a lot of chances start up when you're young. Now, the good thing about being my age, oh, that sounds so old, is that I'm more aware of what it is I want. So I can take very precise action. So back in the days, it was more like, okay, this makes sense. This is what is available. Let's go do it. And nowadays, things are far more from a sense of this is what I want to leave behind. There's way more purpose behind it than what I want to do. So I do guess that going back slightly to the past has given me some new information and some new ideas. And for now, I'm not there yet, but it is sort of palpable that I can do more things when I'm connected with fellow therapists. So I guess that's a good thing. Now, when I said make it into something positive, maybe this is the most important lesson of all. So I said change is the only constant. So we need to be adaptable. So there are two lessons in this. One is the constant, we need to be adaptable, and the other one is making something positive out of it. And actually, if we are capable of adopting that mindset of looking at it from what can I learn from it, how can I use it to my advantage, it's a very different way of looking at things. Now, I know that when it comes to trauma and when it comes to grief, that's going to be hard. But it's also one of the things that I actually got to learn. Trauma brings people closer. Take Cheeky Joe, for instance. If she hadn't lost her husband through COVID, she wouldn't have set up this Instagram page, which is about Jason Begay. So as it turns out, her husband and they met during a movie because they went to a movie from Jason. And that's when she started following Jason. So, she's so totally inspired by that guy. And I do understand where she's coming from because he's a very intelligent guy. He talks about a lot of things. And it's always good to listen to him, if only because his voice is so low, which is kind of nice. But apart from that, it's nice to hear people's point of views. And I didn't know about the word inclusion, but during COVID, I watched a lot of his videos, and one of the things he talked about was inclusion. And then I was like, oh, but that's me. So it brought Cheeky Joe and me closer together. And like I said, if she hadn't lost her husband, then her daughter wouldn't have said, go get out there, go do it. Which brings me to what I've gone through myself. I know part of it is very traumatic, even though I don't really think about it that way. It's like, oh, I know it, and that's about it. It's not like I'm feeling it or something. It's more that it's sort of like a matter of fact. But the fight that I've had, the fight to be heard, seen, and understood, which has been ongoing through my life, that's one thing that I'm using to my advantage now. Because here I am, and come hell or high water, if I see someone who needs it and who reaches out to me, then, I'll say, okay, let's go for it. Because I might see something, but it doesn't mean that the other person wants to change. Interesting thing, change, right? So change is about possibilities. Change is about seeing the positive things in life. It's about learning from it. And if you look at the angle from learning from it, hey, what's it bringing me? Then all of a sudden, change can become something positive, something very good. Now, like I said in the beginning, I was planning on doing this early, actually, because of me wanting to, well, let's say to accommodate the ones in Europe. Didn't happen. Actually, the opposite happened. But apart from that, I think the good thing is a while ago, I decided no matter what, I'm going to continue on. So when I say change is the only constant, well, I didn't expect to wake up at this time that I did. But I was like, I'm still going to go do it. And if it's anything that has happened, it has deepened my sense of urgency, my sense of doing things on a regular basis. And this has to do with both courage, but also with, hey, I said I was going to do it, and so I'm going to keep doing it, because I know what the result would be if I wouldn't be going live. Because that way I would be telling my brain I don't value it enough to go live. And well, that's not the message that I want to get out there. I mean, maybe you don't know at what time I'll be going live, but you will know the next day that there's a video out there, and that you can watch it, and that you can listen to it, and you can pick up the things that matter to you. So it's important, not just for others, but especially for myself, to be reliable in that aspect. So even when there's change, the question still becomes, how can I make it work for me? And well, one of the things was, I said, I'm going out there Friday Night Live, so that's what I'm doing. And why do I know? It can easily turn the other way around, because I've been there, done that. Got the shirt, didn't want it. So now I said, I keep on going. Now, to talk about different aspects of change, a lot of the things that I do are linked to energy, movement, and I guess also possibilities. I'm not sure if movement and possibilities are in the same. I think they are. I think if I look at energy and then I look at possibilities, so those are the base, then on the top is inspiration, growth, but inspiration mostly. Like, how can I do things? And inspiration is what keeps me going. So, in the middle of all of it, of course, is change. Now, going back to this week and talking about that report with the other person, the young version of sort of me, let's put it that way. I talked to my physical therapist. She had seen the little video that I posted out there. Now, that's me on a climbing rack. And it's kind of funny because I was walking along this playground and they have this baseball basket. And I was like, oh, that's cool. I haven't done it for a while. The physical therapist just didn't come around to it. And I was like, oh, I would like to do it again. So I asked my friend, do you have like a basketball? And she said, no, I think that it's not hard enough. It's too soft. Okay. So it's a big playground. And they actually had this climbing rack made from ropes. And I was looking at it and I was like, well, actually, I want to do that. So, of course, the one thing when it comes to ropes is there's nothing stable about it. But that's actually what attracted me to it. So I was, you know what? I want to climb that thing. So I did. And it was kind of funny because, in no time, the kids were up there and I was still climbing up. And I was like, okay, how am I going to do that last part? Back in the days when I was still small, you would just go below certain things and I had to climb and go on top of certain things. And the big difference was looking at it. I looked at it not only from a view of possibilities, but I could actually sort of already feel my muscles and feel what they were going to do. And I could picture in my mind how I was going to climb that climbing rack. And that's a huge difference. So when it comes to change, we also learn how certain things can actually work out by visualizing things. And I know that a lot of people don't use visualization, but it helps you prepare for certain things. The whole thing is about going through certain options. And the good thing is that if you run into the bad options, nothing is going to happen because it's only a visualization, but you are aware of what might happen, which also leads you to the things that you can do and that you can work on. Now, there's also something called muscle memory. So everything in me said like, hey, I want to do that. So I went on the climbing rack, then I was on top of it and I looked at the kids. What are you going to do? Well, we are going to jump. And it was like, there's no way I can jump. So instead, I climbed back down again. And normally, I would have looked at the ropes going down. And nowadays, I do the total opposite. It's actually what I also do when going down a steep ladder, especially coming from the attic. Then at first, I go down where I can see what's in front of me. So basically, the stairs will be in my back, so I can lean against it, I can hold on to it. And I did the same thing with the ropes. They were in my back. So I could still see where I was going, which was way easier for me. And, I've got a very, how do I say it, very creative mind. So do you know those little animals, those bugs that, lie around on their back and they're trying to move? Well, actually, I felt like one of those bugs that grabbed something behind them and then walked backwards, sort of like a spider. So I did. And well, I arrived back on the floor, so in the grass, so that was a good thing. My friend had actually recorded it on video, so you see me saying "say cheese." So I talked to the physical therapist about it today, and she said, "I am aware that you are doing what it is you can do." So she knows that I'm not going to say 1 out of 2 times, but a lot of times I'm not capable of going there. I might be able to actually, pull myself, summon the energy, go there, but I also know it has consequences. I learn that when I'm still very tired, I knock things over, for instance, and I'm not as focused. And I've also learned that it's at the expense of myself when it comes to other stuff. So one of the things I talked about with my coach was about summoning the energy. And I know I can summon the energy for things like this, for coaching calls. But, those calls are limited to one, say, maybe 2 hours. Say, I give group coaching training and I do something afterwards with one of those people, coaches. Then, it might be a little bit longer, but then it's done and then I can rest. But if I, of course, get in the car and I get going, and I've learned how to keep on going. So one of the things that I usually do after physical therapy is I go to a terrace, sit down. Of course, this is the Netherlands, so it's not like it's good weather or anything. But whenever I have the chance to sit outside, I like to go sit outside and just enjoy the fresh air. And if there's any sunshine by any chance, I enjoy the sunshine. I haven't done that for a while because, and then we get back to change, well, first of all, there were only a few parking spaces left. And then second of all, and it was a little bit annoying, I am sort of a luxury animal. I'll say it the way it is. So the downside of me not being able to walk has one upside. I've got a parking disability card. And that has the advantage that I can park on certain parking spaces which are close to all those terraces. Now, having had that one for the last couple of weeks, because the municipality is understaffed and they're dealing with people who are actually working from home because they cannot work. They are ill, so they're still working, but ill. So I want to applaud those people who are like, I'm going to continue working even though I'm suffering from something. And this person had been home for about 8 months already. So yeah, there's been a huge delay, and upcoming Monday, probably I will be able to pick it up. But as a result, I didn't go downtown. First of all, I couldn't park the car. And second of all, I would have to walk big distances. And I was like, no way that I'm going to do it. Which changed my routine. Changed, right? Changed the only constant. And that meant that I had to adapt nonstop because a lot of my habits are actually linked to what I'm doing. And that means that after physical therapy, I want to avoid the traffic jams. So normally I go downtown and then do some work. And the last couple of weeks, I haven't been doing so. And so I was like, okay, where can I meet up with certain people where it's easy to park? And what else can I do? Where can I go so I can still do my work? And actually, part of it actually led to doing stuff right here. And normally I don't want to do it here because I like what I said, to be in a different environment. There's more inspiration when it comes to different environments. So that's one of the reasons that I like to go different places. But apart from that, one of the things that I realized is I am more flexible than I thought that I was. And of course, I know that all of us are more flexible than we are. It's just how stubborn are we? How rigid are we? And what do we tell ourselves? So then we get back to mindsets. And do we see that change can result in something positive? Or do we only look at it, oh my God, what a hassle is this? And when it comes to what can we learn from changes, that's one of those questions too. Now, getting back to everything that was going on, she understood that I did my best, and that actually meant a lot to me. It meant a lot to me that she understood why sometimes I do not come. And the thing is that when I skip a session, that the one who's next in line, so I go to 3 physical therapists who are all in one building, the husband, the wife, and someone who used to be an intern, that is an awesome physical therapist nowadays. Well, he was also already awesome when he was still an intern. Some people, they've got the golden hands, and he's one of them. But the more I postpone, of course, the more work has to be done when it comes to the other one. So today we were facing, okay, we need to get those shoulders to. So the shoulder joint is actually a very complex joint. And just think about the collarbone. Then, of course, we've got the arm. So the upper part of the arm is actually what can move inside the joint. And then we have the shoulder blade. And, well, all those 3 things combined, they are the shoulder joint. So sometimes referred to the joint that's linked to the shoulder blade. Sometimes we refer to it as the one that's linked to the collarbone. Anyway, the movement, of course, is also really complex. Well, you can see I can go backward really easily, but sometimes I'm limited in my movement when it comes to, so I couldn't do this back in the days. And did you hear that snap? Well, that's because the tendons tend to move in a certain direction, which limits my mobility. So then they need to make sure that I can actually do what I normally can do. Because when the tendon is obstructing everything, that hurts. But it was nice to get that confirmation. And I used it on Instagram. And like I said, Friday Night Live is about looking back on the week. And, the one thing I realized is this is going to look so weird when you see someone, I'm half century old, and there I am, an adult in a playground. And then I wrote something along the lines, it's better to have a slow start than no start at all. As in, it's better to start late than never. And I didn't do much with playgrounds back in the days. Well, I do remember having been in playgrounds because there were a number of them in our environment. But it wasn't the same as it is nowadays. And when my mom would join, she would be, careful, you might drop. We don't want that. So my self-esteem and my self-confidence, totally different things, by the way. My self-confidence wasn't high. My self-esteem wasn't high. I mean, I was being bullied. But the confidence that I could do certain things was, first of all, I hadn't learned it. And then because of the instability, my coordination is a little bit off. So, but now I know a lot more. So I'm like, I want to do it. I'm just going to do it. And then we get back to the visualization and thinking a bit in possibilities, and we go back to the dreams. So one of the things that I actually talked about is, hey, please note that if there's change, that it doesn't make you go into a different direction, steering you in the wrong direction or in a detour, as opposed to where you want to go, unless, of course, the detour is going to teach you something. Now, I had to do a lot of things differently last month, if only because of the parking cart. Um, but yes, when I started out, like, okay, what do I want to get out there? Change is the only constant. But it for me, it was also like, okay, for me, it's linked to energy. How much energy do we have? And even if we talk about, and then we go back to the rat race and normal life, normal as in you can go about your merry way, whatever it is you want. But normal, of course, also is like Monday to Friday, you usually work. Usually, it's not always the case. You usually work daytimes. And then in the weekends, you have time to do other stuff. And the question, of course, is what do you do during that time? And actually, because of everything that has happened, I am in this luxury position that I can decide when I want to work and when I don't want to work. Being my own boss, I can, middle of the night, let's go live. And when I tell people that I do a lot of things literally at evening and in the night, in the early morning, they don't understand it. But then I say, well, I work with a lot of these people overseas and are in a different time zone. They do understand it a little bit better. Apart from that, I've always been a night owl because when it's quiet, that's when I can start to think and come with certain suggestions. So, um, so I'm not sure what I was going to say about the people and how they normally go about things. Well, I'll get back to it. It's been a while that I actually lost my train of thoughts, but I know that, I'll just let it go and at some point it will return again. But yes, let's talk about the embracing of change and what it can give to us, what we can learn from it. I think a lot of people, and then we get back to the mindset again. We get back to visualization. We get back to taking the positive, looking at it from a certain point of view. It's the question, of course, is how many times have you been challenged in your life to actually do it? Have you been challenged to ever look at your life from a different perspective? Or has it been like, oh, I started working somewhere and 34 years later, I'm still working there. And yes, there have been some reorganizations, but somehow, I always got out on the good end. So, got my house, got the partner, got the kids. Kids are now about to leave the house or they already have left the house. So, some people, they never have to think about what does life throw them when it comes to curveballs. And then there are people who are constantly dealing with change. I'm one of those people. But if I look at things, then I'm like, it is actually kind of helpful. It's helpful because I can support other people who do not know how to deal with that change just yet. And there's one thing that really drives me, and it has driven me already when I was still working. I want to see change at the working place. I would think with everything that we are learning, things from through the internet courses, whether international courses or not, that certain things would change. But, well, the more things change, the more they stay the same. I don't know. But when it comes to employers and employees and being seen and understood and communication, well, that communication part, that's something that we need to work on still. I mean, we don't learn about it in school. And when it comes to the workplace, nowadays, it's all about how efficient can we do certain things. And well, when I talked about my parking card, I was talking about someone who apparently was doing all the work on her own from home. And I really felt for her when she said, yeah, I've been at home for 8 months. And I was like, oh, but that explains a lot of things. But apart from that, and I'm losing my train of thoughts yet again. Oh my God, this is new. I was like, ever since I'm using those new supplements, I've seen it go up. I was like, oh, this is so cool. But okay, I know what it was again. It was about the employees in the working place and the stress that people experience because they have to keep doing it again and again and again and again. And yes, I can tell that because of it, people, they can express themselves and they can say, I cannot do it. But the question, of course, is, does it make a difference? And that's one of the reasons that I actually stopped working for a boss, because I couldn't handle what was going on. And I always say I had to play violin on the piano. It just didn't work out. So the good news about it is I still want to improve communication. Mindset is my thing, and communication, because about speaking up, speaking out, sharing your story, which is about being heard, seen, and understood, respected, and valued. And then we get back to the inclusion, which I was talking about before. And yes, we can link that to change too, because nowadays we are more open about who we are. We are more showing our authentic selves. And at the same time, there are so many people out there who are not accepting that people want to change and that they do look different and that they act different and that they do not know what to expect. And, we can pretend that we are one species which work in a certain direction and that we are all alike, but we are not. And the cool thing is that when I talked to one of my clients about neurodivergence, she wanted to say normal people. And I said, no, it's not about normal people. It's about most people, or when we talk about the average amount of people who do certain things a certain way, that doesn't make them normal and you the exceptional, so weird or different. It just says that most people do certain things a certain way because they think a certain way and hence they act a certain way. But when it comes to being the exception, that doesn't mean that you're not normal. It just means you do things a little bit different. And one of the things that's very cool about this book is it actually gets into the perks of people who think differently. And that's one of the things that I really want to do when it comes to leaving a legacy. It is about getting to see those people who are a little bit different and actually nurturing what they can bring to the table, what they can do, which other people cannot do. Because they are a little bit different. They think a little bit different, but that creates opportunity. So let me finish by saying this one thing. Change may be the only constant, but at the same time, it's also what creates opportunity. If you dare to look at it from that perspective. So maybe the most important thing when it comes to changes is the question, do you dare to look at yourself? Do you dare to embrace change and say, okay, this might be a hassle. It's not what I signed up for, at least not as far as I can remember. But given the circumstances, let's see how I can use it to my advantage. And I do believe that we can use change to our advantage. Having said so, one of the things that I said I was going to do was the last weekend of the month, I'm going to do a challenge. Now, today is the 24th, and next Friday is going to be the 31st. And I've got training on the 1st and the 2nd of the month. And especially the first one is a long day of training. So for me, it didn't make sense to do it the 31st. I was like, I can announce a challenge, but then, the challenge is right there. So I decided to do something different, change, right? So this Monday, I'm going to do a challenge and it's going to last right up till Friday. So it's 5 days in a row. I'm going to pre record something. So every day there's like, I guess it's going to be somewhere between 20 and 30 minutes of training that you can unlock. All you have to do is register to the link. If correct, it's ladylexi.com/sign up for change. I'll make sure it's somewhere in the description. And then every day you've got access to a certain part of the training. Now, the good news is I've collected a lot of stuff during the year that I've been giving coaching training. Things like meditations, worksheets, all that stuff. And I'm going to use the best and get it in there. So I know I was going to talk about influence, as in I wanted to keep on going. And I was sort of going back and forth between, am I going to do a change challenge because this month's theme is about change, or am I going to talk about influence? Well, one is close to the other. And if I talk about how we look at ourselves and our mindset, then this is about influence too, because it's about how do we influence ourselves? How do we influence our thoughts? How do we influence the way we look at life? How we are going to get our courage to go do things that we might not be comfortable doing, but are going to do anyway because there's opportunity in there. It helps us follow our dreams. So if you sign up, then Monday till Friday, modules will occur. All the modules will be there for 3 days. So after 3 days, it will lock down again. And for me personally, this is so new. But I wanted to do things in a different way. So it's basically the same concept because we're talking about the challenge, but I'm still trying to see what works best. So this is a new thing, sort of based on the old thing. It's more than just tweak and change, but it's like experimenting with what works. And in this case, not doing it on Friday, Saturday, and Sunday, but instead doing it on weekdays actually makes sense. So if you want to join, make sure ladylexi.com, sign up for change. I really hope that's the link. And then I'm going to see you next week. And, we're going to talk about change, also related to influence. And the whole goal is, of course, to come out with something that works for you, with something which is creating a positive mindset for you to work towards what it is you want and to stop doubting yourself, but instead embrace like, okay, this is being given. What can I do to see what it's bringing me instead of, oh my God, there it is again. No, let's look at it from a different perspective. What can I learn from it? What can I do with it? And how's this going to support me when it comes to my dreams? Well, I'll see you again next week. Make sure to register and think about what change is bringing you to your life. Want to see more Friday Night Lives? Then go there. Yes, go there, click on there, and you'll see more episodes.